When I arrived in Australia 25 years ago, I was introduced to the work of a number of youngish architects who had projects all around the fringes of the city. And I remember I would be taken to look at some projects. We'd drive for a couple of hours, look at a project, drive for an hour, look at another project, drive for an hour, look at another one, and that was a day gone. And I was really excited by what I saw. I thought this work was very, very interesting. So those experiences were accumulating for me. But at the same time, as head of architecture, I was supposed to contribute dollars to something called the International Series, which was a talking heads architecture program which brought famous architects from overseas to talk here in Australia. And in Melbourne, this manifested in the Dallas Brooks Hall, where 1,000 architects would listen in awe to architects from usually the United States, United Kingdom, or Japan. And I found this quite an irritating phenomenon. And I started asking the young architects who were inviting these people whether any of them had ever been invited back to talk in the United States, the United Kingdom, or Japan. And the answer was no. And I said, well, I'm not going to fund this series anymore. I want us to do something that gets you into the position where you are being invited overseas to talk about your work. And I said, let's think about why it is that you're not being invited. And I said, I find that when I take your work overseas and show it to people, that I quite often get dismissed by people saying, oh, well, this is like something else that they've already seen on the West Coast or of the States or something like that. I said, I don't think it is like that. There are superficial similarities, but something much more interesting is happening. Why don't you join me in engaging in a critical reflection upon what you've done so that we can unearth what it is that is actually distinctive and particular about what you have done. And for about a year, I was talking to groups of architects, and the program did begin with architecture. It's spread to other disciplines since, but I was talking to architects and saying to them, come on, just commit. I'll create a structure, and you join me, a group, and we'll look together at this body of work that you've demonstrated, which in my view already contains mastery at an international level, and begin to see whether we can piece together the arguments and the discourse that actually support this work, so that when you are in a position to talk about it, you have your story to tell, not the usual kind of PR thing which most of you are giving out, which is, yes, I build on time to budget and pay careful attention to my clients' needs. And eventually 12 brave architects signed up. And of course, being an educational institution, the framework for that was a research degree. But I also thought, having been a practitioner myself, that the only way this was going to work was if I put people together in such a way that there were built into the program regular deadlines. And so started this business of actually saying, there's only one of me and the 12 of you, you're going to have to supervise each other under my supervision. And this is not something where I'm inviting you in as students. This is something where I'm inviting you in as colleagues. And what we do is we get together twice a year in what I then called a virtual graduate school. And for the whole period of a weekend, we would meet. I invited guests from overseas to sit on the panel, guests from overseas and interstate. And on Friday night, we'd meet our guests, we'd give a lecture, sometimes two, we'd then go to dinner, and then we'd have these presentations. And that's where the beginning of this whole process began. And in many ways, it was that structural invention, the creation of a public behavior, which is one of the crucial things about this research program. Because as you know already, you will probably be getting better feedback from your peers than you do from the panels, even. And very often that feedback is taking place over drinks, over dinner, or at lunchtime. It's a crucial dynamic process. And I always said to these practitioners, the crucial thing is that you remain in practice because that's where the research is taking place. And the thing that you should do is to actually make this a completely organic part of what you do. So give it a job number, the research degree, give it a job number in the office, and then include it on your timesheets and work through it in that way. That's how we began. Now, the story is told in this book, which is readily available to you through Blurb. It's not just an account of that story. It takes us through most of what I'm going to talk to you about this morning, but it also contains a number of interviews done by Anna Johnson with people from every stage of the program, right through to Nigel Bertram and Paul Menifee, who you'll see tomorrow presenting, who's a fairly recent completion. It predates any of the completions in Europe, which happened after this, and there are also illustrations of the completion seminars of a whole group of people here. This process is evolving all the time, so every group of you who come through it add to our knowledge, and also we constantly try and improve the way in which we do things. So that's why we have that plenary session, which now fundamentally takes place on the Saturday night, where we ask questions about how we can improve it. It took a while to hit the format of the half-hour presentation with the half-hour talking back, but obviously we now have to we have to do that, very soon had to do that, because we very rapidly got to the point of having two parallel streams, and everything has to go by lockstep so people can move between different rooms and different panels. But we've been learning all along, so part of what I want to show you next is some of the stuff that we've gathered from working with all these architects, landscape architects, industrial designers, and fashion designers. Also the occasional filmmaker and performance director, composer. Numbers of people have subjected their practice to this process.